make you scared.
Welcome to EDIC of February 2020, where no one is bleeding and no one is wounded.
Yeah.
So, before we get into all of this, Janet has joined us from the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Jackie Brousseau-Pereira is on her way, and we will have an opportunity toward the end of this meeting to talk about, I don't know, things that are standing out to you, about ways we might coordinate efforts or care about the same things together. So, has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes that Josh sent out at the end of, after last month's meeting, the minutes of the 21st? Did you have a chance to review those?
Yes.
I did at the time.
Great.
They look great.
Outstanding.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
Second.
Outstanding. All in favor of approving the January 21st meeting minutes? Great. Any abstentions? Any nays? Wonderful. Minutes approved. I would offer the public a chance to speak, but no one came.
Well, I will address as the public.
Tell me.
Just, I want to reiterate my support for the public speak that David Boyle put in front of the city council on the dog park. And this idea that we need the dog park, if and only should happen at Nonotuck.
Thanks.
Otherwise, we shouldn't take other green space and create another zone that somebody else has to take care of, to maintain, when we already have a park that's pre-existing. Just make that park better. My 2 cents. Thank you.
So for the purpose of the minutes, you are supporting the dog park at Nonotuck?
Correct.
Marvelous.
Do we know where that stands in the process?
There's a meeting in March.
And the other thing you said is just because there's grant money available doesn't mean we have to build it.
Right.
Yeah.
You all know about the fish ladder?
No.
Yeah, you don't need to know, but
The fish aren't coming.
Later on, I'll tell you about it.
Later
$1.5
on.
million
After
worth of-
5.
Yes.
Great. I look forward to them. Okay. Thank you for your public speech.
Yes.
We will
Thank
not
you.
be joined by a representative from the planning department today. Our intern Tess needs a little more time to do some data compilation. Jeff is taking a much needed week off. He asked me to share the following information. We have the Barrett Group with Dodson and Flinker engaged to begin our comprehensive housing study. You got that proposal sent to you. The proposed scope is as outlined in that proposal. Makes a lot of sense. The goal currently is to have them here for the day on March 2nd. The general agenda, don't just hold for a second, hold your pens. The general agenda for the day is that there will be a tour with city officials, mid-morning, stakeholder meetings as outlined in that interesting proposal, which I really enjoyed reading, from 12:30 to 4:30, and then a work session to which y'all are invited, 5:30 to 7:30 on March 2nd. So the ideal scenario is for members of EDIC, Housing Partnership, and City Council to have a work session that evening. The agenda is forthcoming from Barrett Group, but we would like people to save the date if you are available and interested.
So this is
Please
a
join us.
pre-talk before they go out and do the study?
This is, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's some preliminary planning work, yep, and getting some early insight from interested stakeholders. So while the meeting will be open to the public, we don't intend to have this be an explicitly community meeting, though we will have one at some point. It'll be a work session led by the consultant to work through questions, data, and other items. Okay, so March 2nd,
What was the time again?
5:30 to 7:30.
Thanks.
And I imagine that you will get more information as we have it. I think that's all I'm supposed to say to you. So,
I'm just curious if there was any feedback from anybody about that proposal and if you read that RFP from the company that's going to be doing the housing study.
I'm also interested to know if you had feedback. I read it and was really interested in how much like a story it read just as a narrative. It was an interesting way to read through a grant proposal.
Yeah.
As someone who writes them.
And that's the company that we're
going
with. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They seem to have a lot of recent experience in the valley doing interesting things.
Well, my only concern was, everything looked great to me, but my concern though is that I don't think you can hire a firm right now that would satisfy me in one respect. There's no urgency with any of these firms. And the housing crisis is starting to grow exponentially. And you know, all you have to do is look at California. And at one time we were 2 years behind California. Now we're becoming more like a year, 9 months. And California's housing crisis is starting to take off from one point of view. It's not new. And I just don't see with the planning profession, I don't mean this on Jeff so much, I'm talking about the consultants, I just don't see any urgency. You know, it's great.
Built into how they think about offering recommendations.
Right.
Interesting.
There's a boilerplate procedure, outreach, community meetings, this and that, which is all great, and it's groundwork that has to be done. But I think they're missing the point that, what's going to speed up the housing crisis. You know, when you walk outside with a pair of shorts on and it starts snowing, you get slapped. We haven't gotten slapped yet. The next recession is going to slap us. And that's, and I just, all I can say is, I don't want to get crazy, but that industry, those consultants, need to move their ass.
Are you available on March 2nd?
I'm not in town.
Have you taken verbatim notes so one of us can do our best impression of David
I
Boyle?
did pretty well there.
What was June, right? Is that correct?
It's a
Is the due date?
26-week schedule.
Starting when? Oh, okay.
Imminently.
Yeah.
It's not so much their deadline.
Yeah, right.
I'm not,
It's about how they help us think.
right.
We gotta get going on this
Oh.
and have
Right.
every
Yeah.
6 months we're making
Yeah,
progress.
you gotta be a little more of a taskmaster, like, okay, we're gonna give you a report June 26th, what have you done on,
Serious conclusions about what steps can be done
Yeah.
quickly to
Yeah.
And I may have read this totally wrong. I did read it, I thought, from cover to cover, but when we've talked about the housing crisis / shortage, we've talked about it at all phases of housing, starting from apartments all the way to your higher end homes. This document seemed to focus a lot more on only one facet of that, which was affordable housing. And it seemed like that's all they're looking for is ways for Easthampton to create more affordable housing. Don't get me wrong, we need more affordable housing, but we need more market rate housing, more apartments, we need more all the way along the food chain. And I hope this doesn't come back as just a report, here's a great way to get yourself more affordable housing.
Right,
Are you available on March 2nd?
Interesting.
I plan on being there.
Magnificent.
Can I just add clarification? I think partly that's because it's the housing market study and the update to our housing production plan, which is focused on affordable housing. So there is going to be a component of it that is just about affordable housing, because our housing production plan expires in 2020. So this is going to update that affordable housing document, and then also do a market study on all housing needs.
All phases of housing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that might be why you noticed that there was an emphasis on affordable housing, because that
Okay.
was part of the
So
scope.
both will come out of this.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thing that Jeffrey was saying is like no real zoning changes or decisions to be made until we have a comprehensive study.
Correct.
So that's the thing is,
And that's to Dave's point, though. This is step one. If zoning recommendations, that's probably going to take another study. And, by the time, I think, just to reiterate Dave's point, New England, maybe as a whole, and Massachusetts as part of that, during the last recession, saw a very slight dip in housing values. We didn't, maybe 10%, if we saw that much. The rest of the country got slammed bad. I mean, developments in Florida, California went under. So we don't see the highs and the lows in New England. We're pretty in a tight band. I think what Dave was saying is watch out if we get hit with those highs and lows. With values as high as they are right now, and mortgages made to those values.
right.
Yep.
You can see a big
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like you're inside my head and
But the
on the
economy's-
agenda with your.
The economy's going to be
questions.
strong for another 4 years after the election, isn't it?
Casey. How many times a day? Okay. Any other thoughts on the housing plan update?
It's in progress. Sounds good.
Yay. March 2nd. I'll see y'all there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Are we not supposed to be part of the rest of that day?
It seems like you're not expressly invited, but I will ask.
Okay. I'm curious to know.
Yeah.
But Tom's available.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And he's got
I've
a
heard he's
dog.
got a day job.
Because I gotta believe somewhere in there they're feeding us.
Things are tight at home.
Yeah.
Okay. I will set myself a task right now. What was the question? Oh, can
Members.
Tom come to field trip day?
No, our, is,
And hang
Permission
the lunch.
slip.
are other committee members, Jana, others, are other committee members invited to
I've not been invited yet.
take part of the whole day, or just the 5:30, 7:30 piece? And I won't be offended if it's not, because I could find something to do. And come back by March 2nd. Yeah. I mean, that's only a couple weeks away here, March 2nd.
Yeah, I'd be curious who the stakeholders are that they're meeting with from 12:30 to 4:30. But
I can ask that question.
assume someone's identified who those people are.
All right. I will add plan stakeholders. Okay. Next is,
Oh, it's me?
well, so I'm gonna let you take this, and I would like to pose to you that I haven't had a single chance to think about this.
It's nothing we haven't already
So
looked
we
at.
either are making a decision today or we're not.
Sure.
And I think you should invite people's feedback to make that decision.
Yeah. So the way we were doing it was, was writing a new ordinance altogether for accessory dwelling units. And during this month, Jeff said to me, you know, it dawned on me it'd be easier if we just edit what we've got. I don't know why none of us thought of that, but it was pretty clear cut. So I went back to the drawing board, and this is what we've got. Section 8.5 here is actually our zoning, our current zoning for accessory apartments. And the only thing I've done here is shift it from special permit to building inspector.
So the things that
And
you
it's by
cross
right.
out.
Right, so all you gotta do is get a building permit and you can build your accessory dwelling unit, assuming it meets current accessory dwelling unit zoning.
And that was our
That's all I,
objective.
right, for step one. I mean, there's an appetite for changing zoning too, but it doesn't have to be tied to this.
Well, that was too
Step by
easy.
step. Right, that's why.
I'm sorry, I didn't
that's-
mean.
No,
to
you're
do
absolutely
that.
right, and when Jeff said it to me, I'm like, damn. You know, because I had put a lot of work into it.
But you learned so much in the
Yeah,
process.
this is true, and in the end, this is just the eloquent way of doing it. So, I know that I sent this to you today. It's because I finished it today. In fact, I did the vast majority of it today. So, I mean, if there are any questions, okay. So the crossed out is obviously what I've changed, and the highlighted thing is what I've added. The first highlight, well, the first cross out is just getting rid of special permit. The first highlight is changing it to building inspector. The zoning enforcement officer is our building inspector. That's what we use for that, in case we ever change it. And if it's a hairy job, this highlight gives permission to the building inspector to consult with the planner if it's questionably within, you know, if they have a question about whether or not they've got authority to prove it. Then nothing else changes. And then in section 8.54, the procedure is just changed to building permit. I exempted some things. I did keep we had some questions about this in discussion here in EDIC about whether or not the owner should occupy. And I think the consensus generally was that they should. So I left that in there. However, there's no requirement upon sale or transfer of property that there is an owner occupied.
Right.
I don't think that's enforceable, really. Maybe it is. Maybe we can keep that.
What do you mean, Chris?
So if I build an ADU,
Yeah.
I have to certify with a letter, a notarized letter, I think, yeah, saying that I'm going to occupy the property.
But what if it's for a mother-in-law or something?
Well,
I'd have to live on the property, and my
Oh,
mother.
live on the property, but not in the
Right.
ADU?
Correct, correct.
Right,
Okay.
but what he's
I
saying is upon
misunderstood you.
sale, that could change.
If he sells it to me,
She
and I'm in
doesn't
it
have to
because I
live
want to rent both
You guys-
You could rent
facilities
them both out.
Correct.
But it's also meant for the current, say, I have a piece of property that I rent out, is to add another rental onto that. That would be a special permit. Because
To make a third one?
Well, no, because if I'm looking to get an ADU, but I don't currently live at that location, I rent it
Oh,
out.
then you'd have to go through the permit process,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, so
Right.
it's really, the intention is for the homeowner
Yeah.
to add a second dwelling.
Right.
Correct, and
And not saying you can't do it the other way, it just is not through the easier process that you're trying to
Right.
set
Of
up.
course,
Right.
I guess they'll
So-
play some games and the owner could live there for a week.
could,
And then
Right.
move out and do whatever,
Right.
but who cares? I mean, the ADU's there for a reason.
But I think
Housing
it's
stuff.
enforceable though, upon sale. I mean, if the zoning is clear that it has to be owner occupied, the main residence, just because it's sold doesn't, you know, I mean, obviously, someone has to bring up a complaint, or the building commissioner has to become
Yeah.
aware of it. But
What if
he can put a cease and desist order on the accessory
But
unit.
what if the owner?
But then you have a limited sale, right?
Oh, well,
Right.
But what if the owner
Think
lives
about that
there?
before you add the unit.
right, no, if you have a unit,
I understand.
But what if I put one on my property, Dave, and I
Yeah.
live there 6 more months, and then I move to a new home? I don't sell it,
right,
and now I rent them both out.
I think that's what we're trying
You
to,
can't do
I think
that.
our
That's
flavor
okay.
was to discourage that.
If you don't
Right.
sell it. If you don't sell it, then you have to live there. But if you sold it,
I see, okay.
now that
Once
opens
I
up.
sell it, they could rent both of them
Correct.
if they wanted to.
Right.
I could buy it as an investment property and rent them both out.
Well, we're trying to avoid that.
No, I'm saying on the second sale, on this, so if I put an ADU in, and I'm living in one and my mother-in-law is living in the other one,
Right.
now, 5 years later, I sell the property, you could buy it and rent them both out and not live there, presumably,
That's what we're
on the
saying.
second sale.
Well, if,
That's what we're trying to.
that, yeah, but I thought we were trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
So that avoids all subsequent sales from being, in other words, it's got to be owner occupied indefinitely.
Right, rather than point in time at point of construction.
Okay,
that's the current.
that's the language.
Why do we
Okay.
want to avoid it?
Because the intention was not to create multifamily, the intention is, you know, I mean, I don't have a problem, if our intention is just to create units, period.
My intention is to create units.
Yeah, you create,
Okay.
but where you have to be careful though is, to your point, or what, to answer your question, you end up with a bunch of multifamily properties in a bunch of single-family neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of becomes
A problem,
contradictory in a sense.
a zoning issue.
See, but these are things that can be addressed. This is not, we're not writing this in perpetuity.
Right.
You know, if there's an issue,
No,
it can be addressed.
if it's
And
enforceable.
This is not like we're submitting this and it gets approved. This is
And
gotta go
that's
through its
another thing
process.
too, is
It's
that
gotta
this
go
is
through
just
its-
step one.
Right, it's gotta go through its zoning,
Zoning,
Process
the
and the
council,
board and-
subcommittees, the council,
yeah.
the mayor.
People
Presumably.
come in.
Yeah. Well, I was fine with this before we even spoke, and I still am, because of what you just said. And I think definitions have to be flushed out a little bit, but I don't think we need to worry about that.
That's,
I like your method of streamlining or eliminating and getting this forward, because it's gonna get bogged down in the process.
Right.
I mean, we can talk as much as we need to, I don't have a problem with that, but I wouldn't worry about solving some of that stuff at the moment.
Yeah,
that's not
I
fair.
agree.
And Chris, what about the very last page? It seems to be
okay. So which one, 856?
the very, very last paragraph on the last page.
So section 8.56 is a grandfather clause. What do you do with accessory units that already exist before this particular zoning went in? Which I don't know when it went in. I see amendments from 14. So it went in before 14. So I didn't touch that because, one, I don't know how legal it is to change grandfathered language again. You know, like if we already have a grandfather clause in property, like, can we go and change that now?
But based on the very last
Okay.
page, is it saying that those situations would require a special permit?
It does.
Yeah, you, if, let's see, if you want to get an existing property into compliance, you have to go before the zoning board of appeals.
Any property that's pre-existing non-conforming,
To the
for
original
whatever reason,
8.5.
to be brought into compliance, has to go before the ZBA.
And I left it for the ZBA because I figured that this is very few instances of this.
Yeah, there aren't many we know of, but if I'm building a new one, I only need a building permit, but if I have an existing one,
From at least before 2014,
then I have to go back for a special permit.
if you haven't already done it,
But only if you want to do something to it.
I think.
But then again, that's the zoning board's
Right.
realm.
But the only reason I brought it up is
But
it
this one,
sounds,
when you read it carefully though, they're talking about not zoning, they're talking about state building regulations.
Yeah,
That's just making sure it's up to code.
right.
right, I was looking at this very last
Yeah,
paragraph.
but you have to
Dave.
read the first one to get to the last one.
That's true.
You don't have to.
So
Clearly.
I would assume
If you
that
wanna
any
make
of these
sense.
ADUs
No, it says
should have
application
already
procedure.
done it.
Yeah.
Questionable about whether or not they've done it, but I thought I would just leave the process there
Yeah, okay.
for a couple of reasons,
I
but
just wanted to make sure it wasn't more cumbersome.
it shouldn't
for folks
be.
that had already done it, as opposed to
Yeah.
folks
But
coming along.
before we move with this, if you look at 855, the transfer, I struck that whole section, because that is about if you have the ADU and you sell the property, what we were just discussing. In order for the ADU to be legal, you have to get another special permit.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone actually does that.
that shouldn't have to happen. I mean, how many ADUs are around?
The reality is too that these special permits, they can't really be denied if zoning is being followed. But what can, as a practical matter, happen, the people in the neighborhood rise up
Right.
and delay it until it dies.
Right.
So, it's an interesting question.
I also know this is quite minor, but I do believe the language you worked on before had it at 50%. The accessory apartment would be 50% or 1,000 square feet, whichever.
We did have different things that we were speaking about. I didn't change any of this. This is existing zoning now. I didn't want to get into those weeds. I'm happy to, as a next step, start modifying. In fact, I have an appetite to modify all sorts of things. But I think that step one is just saying, let the building inspector handle it, and then we can make things better. I assume you want to increase it, was it 33 here? To like 50 we decided or something? Yeah, I do too.
The size of the unit?
Yeah, I'd like it, I don't even mind it being 90%.
I agree.
But, you know, it's a different battle. I think.
Which can go before a special permit application.
As
You know what I mean?
is.
So
Right.
it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
It just means you can't get the
With the
easy
building
pass.
inspector.
You can't get the
Right.
easy pass.
Right.
I'm happy to keep going with this as long as everyone has an appetite. I see the advantage of doing a big, like, huge bill at once, but then that's a fight. That's a fight that people will rise up against, and if we can just take these small bets that everyone agrees is a good thing,
Right.
Right,
I
pre-existing
agree.
good thing, just
just
But I
keep
think-
pushing until we see, oh, not everyone's agreeing anymore, and then we have a bigger conversation.
But I think what Mo said, it, let's get it out of committee and move it, because
Yeah.
it's gonna get chewed up and spit out and thrown back 6 different ways anyway, so if we get it moving in the process, it's gonna,
Well, yeah, because, you know, we, over 2 years ago, we had a small, you know, zoning amendment, and, you know, it's been kind of tabled, which is fine. Part of the intention of that little small baby, the small zoning amendment was to kind of get the planning board to start thinking about doing this stuff. So we haven't done it, in that sense, we haven't really progressed.
This is open, this is a foot in the door.
Right, but when the door shuts on our foot, I think we should be really, like, aggressive,
agree.
I'm with you.
you know.
Agreed.
They got, you know, got to change the mindset to, like, let's, you know, it's gonna get bogged down with the ordinance committee, the city council, but, you know, we just gotta keep pushing it.
But to that point, this should be tweaked, not overhauled,
Right.
you know,
But we,
along the way.
yes and no, but we don't know, I mean, it's all, I guess it's fair to say all bets are off once it leaves part of us.
Right.
Yeah. For all we know, it's going to be completely added to. This foot in the door might actually get everyone moving to make a big bill. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a bill, but an ordinance.
Big change, yeah.
Is anyone opposed to a motion to approve it? So I'd motion to approve this.
All in favor of approving the amendments to the ADU section of ordinance
Aye.
Section 5. All right, okay. Any nays? Any abstentions? I believe the motion passes.
Cool. Can I also motion to get a letter of support from EDIC? Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
I'd do it, but I don't think that would look too good.
Why?
It should
Because
come- it should come from the chair anyway.
Yeah, it should come.
It should go from the chair,
All right, I'll do it.
I mean, I just said that. I don't know.
yeah. I guess I don't.
You could write, you could sign it.
Well, that's been done in the past too.
Yeah.
Sure has.
No, thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Well done. Thank you for your stewardship of this effort. Vacant storefronts, or do you want to
Hey.
save it?
I could just, because I'm sure other, people haven't looked at it recently, but I had a thought that maybe what we might want to do is have a telephone meeting with the person in Arlington who managed the process
Oh, interesting.
and hear from this person about what it was like to implement it, what they ran into, has it been successful, just advice for the city of Easthampton.
That's a cool
That would
idea.
be interesting.
Love connections.
I
like
will
that.
try, and people want to get that set up for next meeting.
Could do. It's on St. Patrick's Day, so if they're not busy.
Arlington, I think it's probably safe.
Okay, great.
Do we have access to a phone
Well,
here?
we can always use,
You can use a
We can-
phone that has a good speaker, a little mobile.
can we get Wi-Fi here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Then we can use one of the,
Oh, Zoom, yeah. Cool.
all right, I will try and set that up.
All right,
But
and
Mark-
I will add myself a note to add it to the
But I'm
March
not
meeting.
sure, Jeff would know if he's here, but the quote-unquote property that spurs this discussion, I think has a permit proposal.
What?
Quoi?
Okay, I thought that was the property.
Yeah.
Green Scurry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a proposal to do something with it.
Take it down, probably.
No,
No,
I didn't read what the post, well, I saw it in the newspaper.
Rehabilitate.
really?
It has some setback, it has to go before the ZBA.
So this isn't a word, is it rehabilitatable? Last time I know about it, the whole
I'm just going from the
Anything is
legal
if you
note.
have
I'm just going
enough
from the
money.
legal note.
Yeah.
So with the roof, the whole roof?
No.
If you were to raise the building and keep the foundation, is that a rehab?
Yes,
Okay.
you can do that.
My guess is
Sometimes you have to,
But the
Well, now
rehab
I'm
is
curious.
so it could keep the footprint.
sometimes you have to keep a corner.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I had to once.
We did
The corner's gone, but
Yeah.
I had to in order to move on to the next
So
step.
does the permit, if it's public, does it say what the plan is?
It should be available.
Yeah, I just read the legal notice.
So did
And
I.
I just happen to know it's that
I
property.
mean, we know, for better or worse, that it's gotta be ground level storefronts.
Right.
And apartments upstairs, possibly.
Right.
Yeah, possible. I'm just saying, the one that, I was surprised to see it myself.
I guess the only,
I don't know what the deal with parking is in the apartment.
I think they get the use of Union Plaza, because the same owner, same owner.
Is that?
I'm curious to know who.
Well,
We're not able to say.
No, we're not, we're lacking information. We have to ask.
Literally unable to say.
But if
Yeah.
it's, but if it's the same owner as Union
But-
Plaza, that solves the parking problem, I
Yeah.
assume.
Interesting.
I guess the question is, if this had been in place, would it have spurred that even quicker than all the
Perhaps.
years it's been
Oh, probably.
vacant?
But we still have,
But it's good that it's moving.
all of Main Street that's
Yeah.
virtually being vacant.
Yeah,
Taylor Reed
I think it's
is
worth
moving to another
pursuing.
location. The tattoo shop is gone.
Yeah.
The hairdresser is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole block is getting to be vacant.
You know, when I
Solving
came here
problems for the future.
from Route 10, there was not one car parked from Old Town Hall the whole way down. Then 2 cars pulled in. But I never saw it empty,
Yeah, wow.
totally empty. Even at night, I mean, usually at night there's someone parked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. What was that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would we want to consider also businesses along Northampton, I should know the route number, but I don't yet, Northampton Street? Like in those plazas and stuff along the way? I noticed yesterday there were vacant storefronts there.
I think it's, I mean, I expressed my concern early on about this, making sure that, we're hitting the right targets, which is, the space next to the barber shop on Union Street turns over a lot. And maybe it goes empty 6 months, but he's constantly working
Yeah,
with a
right.
realtor to get somebody new in there.
But I-
Right.
Just because it happens to be empty 6 months, while he's working to get some, we don't want to penalize the guy.
No.
Right.
No.
I think working with the realtor exempts them from this stuff anyway,
Yeah.
or as, within reason, I mean, we'd have to figure out what's really working with the realtor and what's having someone on retainer.
And
to
that's a good
discourage
question
this.
for Arlington, because they use a very subjective process too.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we don't want to penalize the business owners that are legitimately working to try to fill a storefront as opposed to the storefronts that just
Yeah.
Yep.
are clearly falling down.
I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I love the idea of talking with Arlington in March. So
Done.
if you're willing to work on setting that up, outstanding.
Perfect.
Should we propose like 20 minutes, more minutes? Next month is scheduled to be a 90-minute meeting.
On St. Patrick's Day?
Are you busy?
Well, either you show up or you don't.
Bah humbug.
My God.
All right, I hear you.
I am sorry.
So, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? How long you want with Arlington ideally?
Well,
If we
I think as long
propose-
as we have questions, I mean, tell them 20 minutes.
That's
And then, obviously, if we're done in 10, we're done in 10. If we go 30, it won't be the end of the world probably, but.
okay.
Neil, would someone want to sketch out a couple of questions ahead of time to sort of,
Oh, I think that's smack dab in the middle of Cassie and Josh's plate.
okay, just, I mean, just sort of, so we have an idea of it going into it.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, we should have said, oh,
Yeah.
and another thing.
I mean, if you have ideas,
Right.
How about I send out a preliminary list in advance of the meeting, and then that might trigger people to think of others that they want to.
Yeah.
Sure.
I still have
Yes.
the printout that you would give us, some
Yeah.
of those things too.
yes. Does adding ideas to a list count as conversation?
I was just
Probably.
wondering
It does.
that. It does.
How do we manage that? We can't.
They only can reply to one person. So you
Okay.
can't have
Don't
a
hit
group
reply all while you're doing
conversation.
it. Don't hit
Right.
reply.
But we could all
So-
Can't
spam you
reply
with
all,
our
you have to
questions,
reply
or
singularly.
assuming that you want to be the one that
Would you like to collect?
Is that what's happening?
Great.
Okay.
If you're willing to do that, that's what can happen.
I think that's why the mayor was saying BCC, because then you can't reply all
Mm-hmm.
by
Okay, great.
accident.
Okay. Stupendous.
Come on, move along, move
Would
along.
someone like to see if that person is all right?
No, we just want to get out of here. In case they're not.
Oh, right. Poor people.
Imagine being quarantined for 14 days for Payson.
Are you kidding?
Oof.
Okay. We're now at the part about coordination between EDIC and Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Jackie has joined us. Would the two of you be willing, interested in sharing who you are and why you think I invited you here?
Sure. So the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership is an advisory committee. Our mission is to preserve and promote affordable and fair housing in the city. We merged with the Fair Housing Committee maybe 5 years ago? I was gonna say 3 years ago. 3 to 5 years ago. So we used to just be about affordable housing, and there was a separate Fair Housing Committee, and we merged because the Fair Housing Committee really didn't have any members. It just seemed like
It never met.
a good idea. So we expanded our mission. And so, yeah, we work on affordable housing activities. We have this housing production plan that's up for renewal this year, which is basically our roadmap of, it's like our to-do list of things that we work on in
Yeah.
5-year increments. So, you know, things like the Habitat House on East Street, when that parcel became available, the housing partnership worked with the city to help set aside that 1 acre for affordable housing. And then DCR purchased the other 14 acres to attach to Mount Tom. We've done some RFPs for affordable housing activities to use CPA money.
We were very active as advocates for Parsons Village that Valley CDC built. The guys who created Cottage Square sort of did that, but came and talked to us about it, and we provide a letter of support for them.
We made a video about affordable
We
housing.
did.
It's on the Easthampton Media site.
It's really fun to watch. Great.
So, yeah.
I'll watch that.
So, I think we're here to talk about our mutual interest in housing. And I
And
think
just to remind you that we exist as a committee and we know some stuff.
Right. But I think this isn't, it's, as we've been talking about the market, I think it's a really important time to have allies, you know, in this, when we have things in common. So I think one of our goals is to be able to build our base of support, particularly around affordable housing. And so if we do end up with a new project, to be able to call on both community members and other committees to come and support the projects. Because a lot of times it's just me and Jackie and the other members of our committee. And so it's great to be able to show some diversity of folks in the community that might also be interested in talking about housing.
So one of the things that we got to a point is that as a banker and a developer, the zoning seemed to be the issue about what is keeping things from happening.
Okay.
But we
It's
didn't.
one of them.
One of them, but
Yeah.
or felt like that was the one thing that we could sort of try to influence. But also, I think we just need a little bit more education. We assume that there's needs for more housing, more affordable housing, all this different steps.
Right.
But that's why the housing study sort of came to
Well,
fruition. But
there's nothing like a shortage of supply
Right.
to drive up demand and drive up prices.
Right.
What I find sort of ironic, though, is, so the Fedor property on South Main Street is for sale, the wide open field. People have talked about a significant housing development going in there. There's an uproar in town about saving that for open space. So I'm not sure how you balance that component of the community that says, I like looking at this beautiful field, there's animals running through it every once in a while, we should keep it that way. We don't need more housing. Then if I take that position, then I better be prepared to be quiet about what's happening to the value of my home and my taxes, because not only will more housing stabilize prices, it will stabilize taxes. So I can't have both. I can't have everything be the way it was in 1950 and not have prices and taxes keep going in one direction. But Casey's right about zoning. The other piece we've talked about is the number of people that we all seem to know that are moving out of the city for over 55 housing. Westfield's got 2 or 3 very popular ones, Southwick, Agawam. There are a lot of folks that are looking to downsize, looking for that type of community to live in, have to leave Easthampton to do it. Yes, we have Lathrop, but the last time I spoke to a person going into Lathrop, they were waiting to get into Lathrop. There's a waiting list. So why couldn't Easthampton develop another Lathrop? And if you look at a place like the other side of South Main Street that's zoned industrial, so I've only been in Easthampton for 58 years. We've been waiting for industry to come to that site for 58 years. We're going to be waiting for another 58. I think Jeff had talked about, this overlay zoning that might allow something like that to happen. Well, what a beautiful spot for that type of development. And that was just reiterating that we really need housing in all,
Right.
the kid moving out of the house for the first apartment,
Yep.
all the way to the person looking to downsize in their 60s. There's just nothing. It's all clogged up. And it's not unique to Easthampton.
Right.
It's everywhere
Yeah, it's a
around
regional
us.
issue, for sure.
I think I'm really excited about the housing market study because I do think it's going to hopefully give us some really good data and identify parcels and help the city kind of develop a little bit of a strategy on what to do with some of these. But then you also have to have developers. You have to have people who want to build the things that we want, right? So if we know what we want and we know what we need, then we can be more attractive to developers who do the kind of work that we want to bring.
And one other thought real quick, and Dave, you know more about this stretch code stuff than I do, but that's an issue, that's not really zoning, but it's code requirements. And I asked a developer at one point, why can't, if you had a parcel of land, why couldn't you go in and build a whole bunch of $250,000 homes. Maybe that's not, say 200,000 compared to 450. And they said because of the stretch code and what they're required to put in a new home,
What's a stretch code?
it's basically making the house so energy efficient that,
Okay.
which is okay, but he said, Tom, it's costing me $25,000 just to insulate this home, according to the code. So the first house I ever bought in Easthampton in 1974 was $19,500. That was the going market rate for housing. And maybe it wasn't energy efficient, but it was a roof over my head and it was okay.
Right.
Today that house is probably $250,000. But my point is, again, it comes back to that balance of, we want this house so energy efficient, but we want it affordable.
Yeah.
Can't have both because it drives up the cost to build it. That's why if you go down Pomeroy Street and look at those homes that are being built on Pomeroy, that's what they have to build to make the same profit they made when they were building 200,000. One of the new ones? Good for you.
Yeah, but it's very energy efficient. It was very expensive
Yeah, well, they're like
to do it.
400, aren't they? $400,000
Yeah, some of
homes.
them, yeah.
So, this developer told me that in order to make the same profit, they've got to basically, it's got to be double the price.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I don't know how we get a developer to build, and I apologize if I'm calling something $200,000 or $250,000 affordable, but if a realtor puts a house in the market today for $250,000, they're going to have people lined up around the corner to buy it.
Well, that ship has sailed. The $200,000 house. I mean, one got listed today for $219,000. He'll probably go off for $235,000.
Right.
That ship has sailed.
I was thinking in the $250,000 range.
Well, right, but
Yeah.
Those go in a day.
In a day, they'll
I
go.
think
Right.
probably the only way to get developers to build houses that cheap is to have an incentive, and I don't know, can the city incentivize them?
So
Because
there's a lot of other products that are besides the city incentivizing, and that's part of what we try to figure out what's happening in terms of, like, we've used CPA money to help build certain things, not individual homeownership units, but there's CPA money in both Cottage Square and Parsons Village and Habitat for Humanity. So that's a pot of money that's possible. I mean, Janet and I have been working on affordable housing issues for a really long time, and we hear a lot of the same things that you all are raising around the table. We have for a really long time. I know, David, you are right there with me because we were on the master plan committee
Yeah.
together talking about affordable housing a really long time ago. But there's also money at the state level that certain developers have figured out how to access in order to build. I mean, I feel like I need to back up. So there's lots of different definitions of what affordable housing is.
Right.
Home ownership units, we haven't typically seen a lot of. There's not state or federal money to help build home ownership units that are technically affordable, right?
But would count on our subsidized housing inventory, would be affordable forever, would have a deed restriction.
Right.
There are some of those at Treehouse,
Mhm.
has 9
few,
or 11
yeah.
or something, but there's not a lot of money out there anymore that helps developers build those units.
Right.
It's more rental
I guess
housing.
one of the thought, I mean, you and I have had this conversation 100 times. One of the biggest costs to building a new home is the land.
Right.
So, you know, I threw out an idea years ago, is there an appropriate parcel somewhere of city-owned land?
There might be 3 of them coming up in the near future.
Well, but there's even more than that. There's, like, I live on 146 Hoyle Street. I lease 10 acres from the city. The front part of that 10 acres, Riverside Industries has a garden. That part of the land is about 2 or 3 acres and it's very fertile. The back part, I have horse pasture for my horses. It is marginal farmland. So it should be either reforested or built on. And the city needs to start looking at some of that. I mean, we have land on Oliver Street. Some of it should be reforested, some of it should be open space, but some of it should be built on.
And my point was,
city land you're talking.
City,
okay.
lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
Just because we have it, and just because, like, I have a lease, but the way I look at my lease is, I'm at the will of the city.
The Greenway map. Was it over there? It used to be over there, yeah.
No, but there's land, and land
Gets to
is
the question that
land
you're
is the
raising.
biggest land in any form, whether it be a vacant mill building or or not vacant, but a mill building that has redevelopment potential or green land, but that is the biggest obstacle to any developer, nonprofit or for-profit. You
Right.
have to have land,
That you can work with.
right, a 2x4 pretty much costs the same throughout the country. Labor, believe it or not, is not that much cheaper in right-to-work states than our areas. Prevailing wage up here is higher, and when we get into affordable, Chapter 40B, you'll see some higher costs because of our prevailing wage. But when you still allow for that, it's the land and the buildings that need to be looked upon. We only have 13 square miles in this town. So,
It's funny, let's pay extra for wages for the houses we're gonna sell for cheap.
Well, where I was going with that is if it was possible for.
Well, you have to because it's state prevailing wage, sorry to.
No, that's okay.
No, I'm just
You know,
noting.
There's
yeah.
state or federal money in it, you have to.
If there was an appropriate parcel somewhere that the city said to a developer, okay, we're gonna contract with you exclusively, here's the land, it's all yours. In exchange for that, you're gonna agree to build 30 homes that aren't gonna sell for more than $250.
they can if they have volume.
Correct, you gotta be able to put up enough of them.
Yeah.
And now you put them up and you create, I mean, there must have been an uprising in this town when the Plains was built. Think about it. I mean, when I was in high school, the Plains, you'd drive through there, it was like going to the beach. It was all sand, there was nothing there. There wasn't a home out there.
Where's their place?
And then all of a sudden, the whole southern section of
Precinct
town
five.
going down Lime Street.
So I think, just to get your point of scale, the point of scale, I think, and you mentioned Chapter 40B. So Chapter 40B, is it just, do you guys know, everyone know what that is, mostly? So it lets you override zoning.
To
if
build
you-
more dense.
To build more dense housing than you would normally be able to build if a portion of the units are affordable.
Is
10% is it? or-
25%.
is that the opportunity? No, that's an overlay, right?
Right, this is, it's like by parcel. So Mountain View condos on East Street is a 40B project, Treehouse is a 40B, Parsons Village is a 40B. It allows developers to build housing that's more dense if a portion of the units are affordable, and it can be really controversial, and it can be a really great tool for cities to use to sort of kind of do what we're talking about, right? Is build, have a higher volume so that you can get some economies of scale, and it does allow you to do sort of more mixed income. So you could have some houses that are gonna sell for $350,000 or $400,000, because that's the going market in Easthampton, and then you could have some that are gonna sell for $180,000 or $225,000 or whatever the state determines is the affordable price. And the state has a lot of now incentives to do more cluster zoning, to have more open space, so you would not take that 4 or 6 acres is on Fedor's and build, 300 houses. You would have some open space and have some clusters and have, build things that are closer together so that you can take advantage of the.
But
So-
an example of that by accident, where you live, I mean, across the street from you are $250,000 homes,
Right.
I would say.
Yeah.
And you've got $450 on one side of the street and $250 on the other side. And
That's a good
it
accident.
appears to be working, it's a good accident.
Yeah.
Nobody did that on purpose, it
Right.
just happened that way.
Right.
So the Fedor property, the 6 acres, how many acres is it? A lot.
63 or
60,
65
okay.
or something.
It's like,
So what would the process
Maybe
be
more.
to put that 40B?
you'd
It's
have,
about the developer.
it's about the developer.
They have to come forward and decide that they're with a plan.
But from our point of view, we're below the 10% threshold.
Right.
So any developer that sees a enticing project can just, present a 40B proposal. There is a,
It's not as easy as that.
well, no, it isn't, it isn't. The developers that do it, it's not so hard, but,
Right.
but it's a thick thing. But it goes before the ZBA, not the planning department. The planning department will review it, but it goes before the ZBA, and there's a procedure. But basically, he just needs, there's nothing that anyone here is gonna do until it's proposed.
But keep in mind, Chris, it's private property today, so the
I know,
developer's gotta buy it first.
Right,
and then go
that's
through
why I
the
was
40B
asking
process.
about that. So,
Well,
so-
his price tag is kind of enticing someone to look at it from that point of view.
because of right, it's even worded that way.
Yeah.
I guess what I was getting at, is there any way to preemptively get it ready for that? But if the process is this long, then it's gonna be, who's gonna do that?
Well,
and
what did the city do for Ferry Street? They zoned that differently, which
that was an
allowed.
overlay with the taxes. So I don't
Okay.
know exactly how, with the property tax, where
But
they,
it'll it allowed them to get some infrastructure done, which normally they're on the
That's-
dime for.
Basically, what the city could,
To pay with future
Yeah,
taxes.
yeah.
the only thing the city could do is have informal talks between the planning department and the mayor, property owner, and maybe some people they know that are in the business.
Yeah, so,
Because, like, by any deal, the first part of it is, any developer knows, rule of thumb, how many units they can do, before they get into it, or has an idea, or maybe, or depends how realistic they are, or want to do it. But, affordable, Chapter 40B is more or less 8 units per acre, as opposed to everything else in town is less than that.
so how does one fish for a developer that's not looking? How do we get developers looking?
Well, I think you could think about, I don't know if that's the right question to ask, but the answer to it would be to look at the developers who have already done some things in the area of that size and have done 40B, and it depends on what you're trying to build too,
The developers who have done projects of that size, I mean, I know the number was probably exaggerated that was attached to the Fedor property. What did it say, 300 homes or something? That was exaggerated. But even let's say it's 150. Let's say it's half of that. The developers who've ever done anything like that in Easthampton are along in years. Let's
Well,
put
I
it
was
that
thinking
way.
more like people who have worked doing the
Right,
mixed
the
income kind of
cottage
treehouse,
street.
Dave, you're
beacon.
young. I
They're-
wasn't talking
Well, I'm out of
know who
game.
some of them are.
I know.
No, but, like, so in our town, the Cottage Street development, their principal address was Rhode Island. Treehouse was Wind Development, that's Boston. Valley CDC is getting bigger, but they're still local. I mean, you
And
got,
HAP,
yeah,
which is
HAP,
now
community
Wayfinders.
builders and HAP and
Wayfinders.
stuff.
So let me just ask, I'll take it back a few steps. I'm a book dealer,
Yeah.
and when there's an important collection that goes up, I know. Is it safe to assume that
If
every
it's in the
developer
paper,
knows?
they'll know,
Okay.
yeah.
So Valley
Before it's in the
CDC's aware of it.
So my
Yeah, but they
question is
can't
both-
build that kind of scale, Valley CDC.
No, but they could partner with someone to do some of the pieces of it.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it depends what the city decides it needs there, right? So if what the
Right.
city says we need senior housing, it's a different set of developers. If the city says we
Yeah.
want market rate, we just want housing. We don't care what kind of housing it is. We just want housing there.
I think what
Then-
you said before, which is the market rate with the 10 or 25% affordable that has to be mixed in. I think that would be a great development.
Well, and the housing study is going to be,
It's going to help us.
it's the first step to.
Right.
It's gonna help to identify
You know,
where.
it could be a mix of rental and homeownership. I mean, I feel like it's a big parcel. I don't know how much of it's developable, but it feels like if we know what our needs are, then the city can say, this is, for this parcel, this is what we think we need. And then, that's when I think developers might
But
be
just
interested.
in general, though, my view of the housing is that it's so urgent that I don't see why the EDIC would not support any proposal that you guys were working with.
Right,
And
every proposal.
right.
Right.
I mean, because
Because-
whether it be market rate, mixed income, affordable, I think we take the view that,
Any inventory.
right.
Yeah.
is-
Any inventory in that food chain, from the first kid's apartment to the tail end, any inventory is going to turn up the whole market, because if folks move from Easthampton, and granted, folks could move from out of town, but if folks from Easthampton move into this new development, their home's going up for sale.
Right.
And so it turns that whole, and maybe someone's moving out of their apartment into their first home, that apartment's becoming available. So it turns, if you can inject inventory into any part of that, it's going to help to churn the whole market.
Does it, when you have a big parcel, pardon me, like that, does it all have to be for the same purpose, or could you have
No.
55 plus in one corner, affordable in another?
Well, currently Easthampton has no senior housing zoning, over 55 zoning. So, I don't know if we can do it like that in any way at all.
And we got rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it?
Yeah.
But I
But
think
again, the point, not so much, but you can split purpose
Well,
of
I
big
think
lot.
when we refer to the plains, it wasn't all built overnight. It was built over a lot of numbers of years. And if you look at if you were up in a plain looking at the housing in the plains, there are those homes that originally sold for $25,000, and those homes today that are, and I'm not even referring to Pomeroy, but if you go down on some of the Plain section that, Golden Drive, that stuff, those were more upscale than the first section was
Yeah.
built. So if you took the Plains as a whole, there's one section that you might almost call affordable housing.
The ghetto of the place.
There, yeah, but then there's the back section that came later, Fox Run and all of that, it's all part of the Plains. Those are $400,000 homes today. So it can be mixed, just by, no one's gonna go in there and build 300 homes in a year. It's gonna take years to develop something like that. And so it does evolve into a different style of homes just by accident.
Interesting. Well, and
So-
also because it's all privately owned and privately developed, so it's not
Right.
all according to one plan.
So I guess long story short from EDIC is we've been looking at everything to get inventory up. So if you guys have to table anything, because you don't have the power to do it or the time, just let us know.
We don't really have any power, I just want to be clear.
I meant like manpower or like the effort.
Knowledge, you got knowledge.
We have knowledge, but we have no power.
Yeah, but
No,
you're
no,
still.
when I said power, I meant available hours to do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we are an advisory committee, so developers will come to us sometimes if they have a project. We don't have any, there's nothing coming
In the hopper.
that we are aware of.
Not
Or
even,
if
not
you
even
do
Everett
see-
Street?
I don't-
Not the little house next to the cemetery?
No, yeah.
Next, nothing, we've not seen anything that says that we're moving
Hasn't
forward
moved.
yet.
As in-
So we don't have we don't have anything in the hopper, that nobody's come to us. The Everett Street is the only like glimmer of hope that was on the horizon, and I don't know what's gonna happen with that.
That's that open parcel.
Yeah, but the city's doing some preliminary work, and I don't know. So, I mean, One Ferry Street is the only really thing that's going on, and there's no commitment there for
Not for affordable
affordable
housing
housing.
anyway.
So,
Worker housing, right, is what
They're
they're
calling it
it.
workforce housing?
it's a
It's-
loose commitment.
Sure.
to-
No, yeah.
And the loose is like, is like generous.
Yeah.
I don't
But
think,
it's not tied into any federal money, so it's not like it's obligated
not at
to.
the moment, right?
Last I knew, Dave, he hadn't committed yet to apartments versus condos or vice versa.
Oh, yeah?
I
He's just
thought it
doing,
was-
he's brought it back to phases, and he's just doing that
One
one
at a
building.
time.
Yeah,
Even though he's doing some other preliminary work, and I think it's a moving target,
yeah. Again, that might be something that
yeah.
might end up with a mixed use just by default over the years, where the first building might be apartments, but then he might go with condos as he goes deeper into the
Based on where the
property.
money comes from,
Exactly.
Yeah,
needs
he's got some
are.
unknowns still, I guess, to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think we have anything else.
No. I just was gonna say, if anyone's interested in hearing more about kind of the details of what is affordable housing, I don't know how much, I know you know this
Yeah.
stuff, but the whole idea of the affordable housing inventory that the state keeps that we're supposed to be at 10% of, and we're at just under 7% right now. If you all ever want more information about what that is, what qualifies as that, what fits on it, what we mean when we're talking about affordable housing versus like what the general public means, we're happy to talk about that stuff, because I think it's complicated, for sure.
If that percentage is of our total housing supply, so as more units are added that are not, then that gets even more
That's right.
further and further away.
And those units that are on that list have to be a specific type, so they have to have an affordable deed a long-term affordable deed restriction on them for, they prefer it to be 99 years.
When the 2020 census numbers are finalized, our number everybody will go down.
Yeah.
But the year-round housing stock number is only counted every 10 years. So we can add to our denominator. I always get them mixed up, but the numerator only changes at the census. So at the 2020 census,
Uh-huh.
everybody's numbers across the
Gets
state
reset.
will probably go down.
So the state wants 10.
Yeah.
What do we get for that? Do we?
Well, we'll never get to 10%,
Sure.
first of all. But the more that we're at least attempting to make progress and doing that in good faith, it gives us some priority on certain
On
kinds of
grants.
grants.
And,
stuff,
yeah, exactly, say, if we're not eligible for certain things, that's
We're
what Jeff
making
was
an effort,
saying, was
sure.
that we're in a
Yeah.
sweet spot, we're eligible for a lot of stuff.
Right, right.
But that may dry up if we don't.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not gonna get to 10%. It's just not really feasible for this community.
Not enough land to develop to get.
Not enough
that-
land, and it's hard to build
Yeah.
affordable housing, really hard to
It
build
usually takes
that
3
kind of
market
affordable
rate
housing.
housings to help to subsidize one.
Yeah, that's the 25%
Yeah.
piece.
Well, I'm very grateful for your being here. Thank you for listening and talking and being part of our group.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks for inviting us, Gwen.
Thanks for inviting
My
us.
pleasure.
And conversely, if there's things that you feel like our voice would be helpful on, then
Yeah.
please let us know. Because we're, I think we all agree that we need more housing in general across the board.
Definitely.
One thing that, I mean, when I subdivided my lot, the talk was to get the house, one of the apartments deed restricted for affordable housing, but there was no follow-through on that or advice on how to do all that.
Okay.
And so the question sort of is there money available to help rehab the apartments and the apartments to make them, I mean, if the public knew that there was funds available to then get it qualified, it was meant to be a trade. I didn't have
Yeah.
enough frontage.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, well, if you don't have frontage, we'll let you do that if you do this. But so, and I'd heard that there was potentially grant money available to rehab some properties, to get them code compliant, to get them, you know what I mean? Is there a way to educate the public about that stuff, or?
Sure. I mean, I think I'm thinking of CPA. You could use CPA money for that.
Yeah, well, the housing rehab grants, but you
And-
have to be income eligible.
Right.
Which
You
is
want the
tricky.
owner or the tenant?
Good question.
Both, I think, for housing rehab.
So
I love this, and we need to end.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is have a conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
After we
Follow up
Once
with
we get the
Chris.
clicker.
No,
Hold on,
on
you
the
slow- you slow
video.
down.
So motion to adjourn. Anybody?
Wait.
You got something to say?
Yeah.
Just
All
food for
right.
thought, I'll just pass this out quickly.
Oh boy.
You know that we have, stormwater,
Yep.
well, anyway,
Stan had a good letter to the
he
editor
did,
today.
and,
Thank
Yeah, he
you.
did.
my point of view, if you read the bottom, I'll go through this quick, I'm sorry. If you read the bottom,
Yeah.
the long and short of it is, $180,000 a year, I don't know how many years goes back, from our road fund money has been used regarding stormwater in the water sewer department. They're saying that if a rate is instituted, that potentially that 180,000 can go back to road projects. So from
An
my.
answer to pave the roads.
Well,
we
fix
can
the
get
potholes?
17 square feet done.
Right.
Yeah.
It's 180,000, what I'm getting at is, I have some other concerns about this, but just to make it quick, from an EDIC point of view, no, back up, from David Boyle's point of view, I think a stormwater fee might be a reasonable thing. That's all I'm throwing out there. I know right now it's very sensitive and people don't want taxes or increases, fees, but the water sewer enterprise fund is supposed to be self-funding, first of all. I understand there's overlap, this and that. There's another one with indirect costs, which I won't get into, but we need better roads. And if there's $180,000 a year being used.
Wasn't there something said though, Dave, about how our enterprise fund today as it exists is water and sewer?
Right.
I read somewhere something about those should be separated out.
That very well be, I'm not qualified to say, I don't know, one of our problems with our water is, when it came in, we were a high water use community because of the mills.
Right.
Easthampton EDIC, which is 15 Cod Street, at one time, their yearly water fee was $300,000.
Right.
When they closed, it went away, it was never made up again.
Yeah.
So, maybe they need to relook at some of this. That's beyond me. I just thought, though, that, I'm wading into, I know, controversial area.
Well, I think the biggest unknown right now, a lot of people that I run into and ask
Yeah.
questions is, how's it gonna be calculated? Is it calculated by the percentage of my lot that I have covered with something?
Right.
So if
That's
I-
how Northampton did it.
So if I have a 1 acre lot and I have half of it covered, they're gonna calculate what my tax is gonna be. If I have a smaller lot and less of it covered, it's gonna come down to some calculation, I
Square
guess.
footage of covered space, not necessarily percentage of lot. I could be wrong.
Well, there's
but
different
that's what
ways. I pay a stormwater fee in Nashville, it's $3.25 a month. $3.25 a month. $3, so there's different ways, but I don't know how, there's a meeting tomorrow night, I don't know, I have no idea how long the process is gonna be.
No,
Can I just put a bug in everyone's brain before we adjourn? There are places in the city that cost a lot more to maintain because we're very spread out in some parts, and some parts where we're really crowded.
Yeah.
but we all pay the same water and sewer rate. It doesn't have to be that way. Just saying. That's all.
So,
Yeah.
I like this, I like that we're having a conversation
Mine
about
is just
it.
food for thought, that's all mine is.
That's great.
Yeah.
It could be food for thought. Is there something that you ideally would like to talk about with this group? Or would you
I'm
like to
not
invite us
qualified
to
yet.
go to a meeting tomorrow?
No,
What-
I just want, it's just food for thought in case it was on your mind, it's just my point of view.
But that meeting stuff's been
Okay.
going back and forth. I thought there was a meeting on the 26th.
I thought it was a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
It could very well be.
But I
It
saw
could
something
very
on
well be.
Facebook.
The meeting was to schedule the meeting.
Oh, okay.
That was that
That
other
was the
one.
last meeting.
So what's the
Yeah.
19th? There is a meeting tomorrow, I believe. But I don't,
I'm not sure.
No, Thursday, I'm sorry, the 20th.
It wasn't agended though, supposedly.
Oh,
Oh,
I don't know if
I
that's
did, I
accurate.
saw that too.
Right.
They said the agenda didn't get in.
yeah, I hate to admit, we've been adjourned. I got tipped off this by Facebook.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Not re-
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, peace out.
Peace out.